Good evening and welcome to Talking the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host, coming to you from the BNN Live studios, Eggleston Square, Jamaica Plain, where tonight on the Boston Neighborhood Network, we bring you a two-part show. First up tonight, like all of you, we're still in mourning from the March 26th fatal fire in the Back Bay when 2 Boston firefighters lost their lives and 13 others were injured. Tonight, the president of Local 718 of the Boston Firefighters Union, Richie Parrish, joins us to talk about the brave men and women of the Boston Fire Department, what drives them to run into burning buildings, and also last week's glorious send-off when nearly 10,000 of their brothers and sisters showed up for the funerals of Eddie Walsh and Michael Kennedy. Then on the second half, well, her legend grows. She is a giant killer since she slayed the Casino Dragon at East Boston, Suffolk Downs in last November's ballot box question. What's up next for Celeste Myers? Well, there's a new threat on the horizon right next door in Revere, and also she's leading the charge to repeal the state's gambling law. We'll talk to her and find out the latest from her front. All that and more tonight on Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, host. Tonight, a two-part show, and in this first half, like all of you, we're still in mourning over the Wednesday, March 26th fire in the Back Bay. Nothing could be worse. 2 Boston firefighters killed in the line of duty, 13 others injured. A tragic fire that made worse by a blowing wind, a gust of wind that blew through the building. They're still looking to find out the exact cause of it. Of course, tonight we talk with a gentleman who helps to lead his brothers and sisters. He is the president of Local 718, that's the Boston Firefighters Union, and an old friend as well, Richie Parrish, joins us. And Richie, nice to have you here, my friend.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Tough week for you and your brothers and sisters. Couldn't be tougher to put to rest 2 of your colleagues, and I don't know how you do it, but let's start out this way, because did you know Eddie Walsh? Did you know Michael Kennedy? And what can you tell us about him? Because, you know, much is written, but it doesn't, I think, probably do justice to what his colleagues, their colleagues know of them.
Yeah, I knew Lieutenant Walsh and Firefighter Kennedy from being involved in the union. A leader of the union, you bounce around to firehouses, you get to meet him, and even when I was working, I knew Lieutenant Walsh. 2 great guys. Eddie was a great leader, a lieutenant, and I know he was going to become a district or a deputy chief someday in this job. He knew how to run a company. When he came into a room, you knew he had order in that room. And Firefighter Kennedy was different. When he came in the room, you had a smile on your face because you know he was going to come in and entertain you. You know, there were 2 different guys, but there were 2 great firefighters, and we lost 2 of the best firefighters that day.
Well, what type of person, because I think most of us can't even imagine what it takes, but what kind of person does it take to run into a burning building like that, knowing full well what could happen, and in this case did happen?
Right, I mean, we're a certain breed. We raise our right hand, we take an oath to protect the citizens in the city of Boston, and you know, we go through training, and we live together. We have 2 families, the one we live with at home and the ones we work with. We spend most of our time up with the members we work with. And you know, we support each other, and it's a team effort. When you go into a burning building, you know, when you go to work, you don't think that you're not going to go home. You go in there and you do your training. You have fun with the guys. And what I'm saying with fun is when you're training, you're working together. You're protecting the citizens of the city of Boston and through the state and through our international, just not Boston. So it's a bond between the brother firefighters and sister firefighters. And we watch up each other's backs. And when this happens, it's tough. And the outpouring support all through United States and Canada, all over the country, we've been getting calls, cards, and I want to thank them personally for the outpouring support that they've been giving.
It was incredible. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, but take us back to that day. What happened that day? Do we know what was really the cause of the fire, and when did it become clear that it was too late?
It's under investigation. The investigation's ongoing. I have no idea what's going on, and my job is basically to look out, make sure the members had a decent burial, and watch out for their families. And to this day, that's what we're doing, to make sure that their families are taken care of. And the investigation will come out. And what went wrong that day? I don't. It was.
Were you there that day? Were you?
Yeah,
I'm sure you were called in.
We all respond on special calls. I'll respond, and we heard on the radio, and we all about 2:30 in the afternoon we responded in, and it was a windy day. The smoke was coming across the street. The firefighters, lieutenants, captains, the district chiefs, and right up to the deputy and the commissioners there, they all did a great job. They all can keep their head high, and they should, because the deputy chief, the commissioner, and everybody did a fantastic job that day, and they should be commended for that.
Well, it's almost too terrible to contemplate and what can happen when things go wrong. But I wonder how your colleagues, your brothers and sisters, deal with something like this. I mean, it had to be very hard on them, the emotion. I'm sure there were several attempts to save them. But what's going through their minds? Help us to kind of understand the mindset, because like I said, it's almost too terrible to contemplate.
No, and I want to just say one thing. The deputy chief that worked that day did a great job, along with the commissioner. He saved a lot of firefighters' lives.
Could have been worse.
Absolutely. And if I was I learned something that day when I was standing next to Chief Finn and the commissioner. Learned not to study to become a chief, because I wouldn't want that responsibility. If I wouldn't know if I could make that call. It's a tough call, but they saved firefighters' lives that day. Because our guys, as a firefighter, you want to charge in and get them, and you can't. You could have had 20 more, 30 more firefighters.
Well, that's what I mean. How do your colleagues kind of control themselves in that situation? Because the impulse, when you hear that two of your comrades are down, must be to bust down the doors and try and figure out. And I know you do some of that anyway, but
right. Well, but the chiefs have to look out for the lives. They don't want to sacrifice any more other lives, and it's a tough call. Like I said, I wouldn't want to do that call, and I give all the district chiefs and deputy chiefs and the fire departments all over the United States and Canada a lot of credit, because it's
at
a call
at
some point they're going to have to make that call, and it's a tough call, and I wouldn't want to again make that call.
Well, and I'm sure to a certain extent, the 9/11 crisis, that same kind of thing happened, and people lost their lives. And,
Exactly.
But more could have, in this instance, of course. And as tragic as the fire was and its aftermath, the camaraderie and outpouring of sympathy that was displayed during the funerals was nothing short of inspirational. I mean, it was, I don't think anybody that saw lined up 10 deep, all in a salute, could fail to be moved by that. And
no, you're right. I mean, and the mayor was at both of them. He spoke at both of them, and I want to thank him personally too. He was at the fire that day, and he made sure that the next day that he sent his staff down to help us out, to work along with us to make sure that we put these two funerals on. And he did a great job, and he was standing right there beside us. And I want to thank him. And he's had a tough couple of months as being a newly elected mayor. And just all the Boston police, the state troopers, the Boston EMS, everybody, the city staff, everybody that worked together that day, the doctors, the nurses in the hospital, we had 17 guys injured also.
right.
And, they did a great job. And when we went to the hospital, they were great to us. I just like to thank all the people that helped us that day, and for all the support they've given us to this day.
I know many of your colleagues just showed up there
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
at the hospital to check on their status. And
Yeah, it's to check on their second family,
right.
and it's a brother and sisterhood, and I'm proud to be a leader of that. and proud to be part of it.
I can understand why. Now, what were the estimates were that there were as many as 10,000 firefighters from across the U.S. and from Canada,
Australia,
and from Australia,
Alaska. They came from everywhere.
What is it that I mean that is just so incredible and that draws them in. I mean, you know.
It's my wife works at a dentist right across the street from Holy Name, and she told me a story the other day. Two guys come in, and they had to use the bathroom, and they opened up the dentist there in Rosendale for them. And they were talking to one of the ladies in the desk, and they were from Michigan, and they drove up in their car, and she says, "Are you staying over?" He says, "No." They changed into their, their civilians after the funeral, and went back. They said, "We have to go back to work." So they drove up.
Drove all that
way, went to the funerals, and then they got changed at the dentist office, used the bathroom, and they got in their car, and they went back home to work. So that shows you a kind of, that's just one story out of many.
Well, and so many. How did you handle the logistics of it? I'm sure a lot of it fell on you and the Union Brotherhood.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I have a great team behind me, and I want to thank them also. All the hotels, they reach out for us, the bus companies, like Massport. Massport Fire helped out, Massport with buses, and the private companies, the MBTA. They all just, we band together, and the hotels get in touch with us. And we just band together, and, Jimmy Rooney called me from the convention center, and he said, whatever I need, So it shows you how, Boston is a great city, and it is Boston strong, too,
It is. Boy, to deal with that. What was the toughest part of the day for you? Well, it was
Seriously?
two days of funerals.
2 days of
First,
funerals, even that day
Lieutenant
what happened,
Walsh, and
and,
then Firefighter Kennedy the next day.
Right. Well, that day after actually is, my predecessor, Eddie Kelly, and a dear friend of mine. And I want to thank Eddie also. He was by my side.
man.
He's a great guy. And stood by my side and made sure that, he helped me out, along with, Michael Mullane and the rest of the crew down at the union office. And we had to go and tell the parents, and we had to go tell the mother and the families that, their son and their husband's not coming home. That's a hard thing. And then you have to, take care of them, and then prepare for the funerals and make sure everybody's taken care of, and the families during the funerals, It's hard. And what's really hard is sitting there and talking to the families, and just, they're strong. I don't know how strong.
Lieutenant Walsh had 3 young children.
Yeah, three young children, right.
Boy, looking them in the face.
It's hard. And Kristen's a very strong woman. She really is. I give her a lot of credit, and for the rest of their lives, they won't have the father. But we're going to make sure that their family's taken care of, and we're going to watch their backs for the rest of their lives, and that's what we do.
They're going to have people watching out for them, and of course, Firefighter Kennedy from West Roxbury, Rosendale kid from out southwest Boston here. His mother, and seeing all of his family there.
Yeah, it was mother, Kathleen, and his father Paul. Two nice people, and I met their aunts and uncles, and and they come from a great family, and he was a big brother, and he was a veteran, combat veteran. He was involved in everything, the Burns Foundation. I was with him the night before, and he was involved with the Burns Foundation, and was at a fundraiser for there. So he had a big heart, Along with his big smile, he had a big heart too, He was a great kid.
Well, that's the tough part, is seeing them then and then thinking of their demise, and it's got to tug at your heart.
Yeah, it does. I just you see them one day, and the next day they're gone. And it's hard.
Yeah. Well, so what are the lessons learned from this? What should we take out of this tragedy? And, there was and not to, there was one columnist that suggested that the department regs weren't clear enough about when somebody should go into a building and when they should, stay out and this and that. Is that, do you anything to that? Is that something
no, we're
to
not gonna
think
change.
about?
Personally, I have 29 years on the job, and I was very fortunate to be on 3 good companies before I became vice president and president, and I had the best teachers. And we're not going to change anything because we did everything right that day. You know, we charge into them burning buildings. We saved people that day. There were people that were saved in that building that day. And, you know, people say, why do you go in? Well, you know, a lieutenant once said to me when I was on Engine 24 up in Grove Hall, I go, how do I answer that question? He says, when you go in and there's a kitchen fire and you have a picture of your mother and father and your mother and father are dead and they have their wedding picture or anything, you know, and that if you don't go in and stop that fire right away, that family's going to lose that picture of their mother and father, and that's true. So we save lives and we also save property. So why would, you know, that's what we do. That's what we raise our right hand up for, you know, to protect the citizens, and we die for strangers.
It takes a certain kind of person to do that, so I give you an awful lot of credit. Again, Richie Parrish is the president of Local 718, Boston Firefighters, here tonight talking a little bit about the tragedy of March 26th. 2 firefighters died and 17 others injured, you said.
17 others injured.
This has got to be tough coming after. You were here a little less than a year ago talking about the aftermath of the Boston Marathon bombing and the work of first responders and what went into it. It's been a tough year.
It's been a tough year. And the team worked great together that year too, with the police and the Boston EMS and the nurses and the doctors. The same team were back on the streets again that day when those 2 firefighters got killed. So yeah, within a year, imagine. And it's just, you know.
How do you lift your head up and go back out there after something like that?
That's what you gotta do,
Doesn't
you know what I mean?
just, you know, somehow, you know.
Well, you know, you love doing it. We love doing it. Everybody who takes the oath loves doing it. And, you know, when you get up in that morning, when you know that you can't do it anymore, that's when you retire, you know. And it's a great job. It's the best job in the world, is being a firefighter. I really do, you know. I'm very fortunate.
And how are your colleagues handling the aftermath?
They're doing okay.
Their grief. It's got to be tough to go back to work. That was Engine 33.
And Ladder 15.
One of the busiest in the city.
Yeah, and they've had a lot of, you know, I mean, in that area there, I mean, we lost a close brother, Frankie Flynn. He passed away with cancer. He was active, and he passed away right after Christmas. And actually, Frankie, he was a senior man. There's a certain position on our job. When you're a senior man, you kind of like you run the house. You have your offices, then you have your senior man. He makes sure everything stays in line. And I know Frankie's looking down on us right now. And you know, there's a void at 33 and 15, and they were just getting over that. You don't get over it, but you know, I walked in the patrol desk the other day and I saw Frankie's picture, you know, and yeah, and so I know he's watching down on us and keeping us safe. So. Michael and Eddie are up there with him now, and they're going to make sure that we're all safe, along with Joe Mullen that died the same time with cancer, you know.
Tough to control your emotions after all of that, though?
Yeah, it was, especially that night.
I know you guys are all tough guys, you know, but, you know.
Yeah, it was hard, you know, when they went to press conference that night, you know, that's hard. But the next day at the flag, you know, the mayor raised our flag on City Hall, and I want to thank him for that. And you know, we spoke then, and you know, you just got to stay strong. As a leader, you got to stay strong, so your troops stay strong. You know.
Stay strong, lead Boston strong.
Yeah.
Well, Richie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
God bless you all. You know, that's an incredible story. Again, and Richard Parrish is the president of Local 718 of the Boston Firefighters Union. Still mourning, like all of us, the loss of 2 Boston firefighters and the injuries to 17 others. And again, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing that with us.
Thanks again. Thanks for having me.
Turn the page, so to speak, back to politics, our usual want. And coming up, Celeste Myers. She is the dragon slayer of sorts, has slain the casino beast that raised its head in East Boston. What next for her? And what of the proposal for a casino right next door in Revere, also one in Everett? Neighborhoods, I'm Joe Heisler, your host. Tonight, a 2-part show. And then this second half, we shift gears back to politics and talking, of course, about the latest news on the casino gambling front. When we last spoke of this matter, joining us was the same guest we have tonight, She led the charge against casino gambling, one of those who led the charge against casino gambling in East Boston, and surprise, they defeated the proposal to build a casino at Suffolk Downs. Well, many developments since then, and I'm happy to have back joining me Celeste Myers, who is one of the founding members of No Eastie Casino. And Celeste, nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be back.
Well, have we slain that dragon or no? So many things have happened since then. Of course, and we were talking on the way in, the kind of euphoria amongst you and your colleagues that seemed to come out of nowhere and defeat the casino proposal was short-lived, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were pretty sure we had slain the dragon. It seems like we just knocked him out a little bit, but he's been stumbling around for the past 5 months, and we're still working away. We supported the folks with their efforts in Revere. They had a really tough battle, a 2-month runway. The winter weather was brutal. The environment in Revere is such
2 votes, actually.
Right. And the February 25th vote occurred under just so much pressure, and not unlike Boston, the overwhelming sentiment among public officials was pro-casino, and they flexed every single muscle that they could, and it was just so challenging to get the message out there.
What was different, though? What was different there than what ended up happening in East Boston? Because it wasn't so long before that many people were saying no chance of defeating the casino proposal in East Boston. Was going to pass overwhelmingly.
Sure.
And then, voila, guess
I
what?
think it was a perfect storm of occurrences. You know, it was a very short runway in East Boston. We were campaigning far before the legislation even really passed. There was, Neighbors of Suffolk Downs, which was the original group started by John Ribeiro, who was getting the message out in East Boston and started some dialogue. And we had over 2 years to get that going. The other piece was you throw Everett into the mix, and it borders Revere very closely. Yep. And so, the elected officials who were really pushing for a casino in Revere really used that as kind of a talking point. They described that there would be impacts if it went to Everett. They were really pushing the sentiment that it would be Everett or Revere either way, which really, if the gaming process, the licensing process, were as robust as the Mass Gaming Commission purports it to be, theoretically, you could have 100% support in each potential host community and still have the applications not be approved. So, that was really kind of a tactic that they used to kind of scare folks in Revere, I felt.
Well, they came back within, it was a matter of days, and said, well, we can't, we're not going to do it in the East Boston section of Suffolk Downs. We're going to move right across the border. Now, you folks challenged that, if I recall
Days,
correctly.
it was about a half an hour. It was about a half an hour. We claimed victory. I had about a sip out of my victory drink, and we were hearing murmurs already that they were planning just to move it to Revere anyway. Look, the sentiment that we're hearing coming out of Revere is that their elected officials and their representatives don't have a whole lot of other ideas. So they're really desperate for this potential windfall to come to their community, and naturally there can never be too much money going into any city, but you can't look at revenues at any cost, or the lure of revenues at any cost, jobs at any cost, or lure of jobs at any cost, because it still remains. We started this dialogue with Suffolk Downs over 2.5 years ago, and they still haven't gotten much deeper than the 50-foot view. They keep just saying jobs and opportunity, but haven't gotten really, granular and specific.
Of course, Revere is a much smaller, compared to Boston, of course, but it's a small city, and you had the chief elected officer there, the mayor of the city of Revere, really pushing this as well. How much influence did he exert in this?
He had a lot of influence. During the duration of, again, the very short campaign, there were 2 town hall meetings that occurred at City Hall, the largest venue of which holds about 135 people, that were packed with a lot of pro-casino folks. Comments and questions from folks that had an opposing view were very limited, and of course this was broadcast across the city. Now, right out of the gate, when you already have 4,000 people that voiced some degree of concern back in November that voted against the casino, you know that they're not having their questions being heard. And so, you know,
That was the first election you were talking about.
that was the first election, but now the following election, there were only 2 town hall meetings. And if you're only catering to about 300 people in person, and you're kind of broadcasting this propaganda message, it's tough to really get the word out. And honestly, the folks that led the charge in Revere, they led a very valiant effort. They were a young couple. They had just gotten married. They really were home from their honeymoon, and they really picked up the baton and kept it going. But they had a hard time. It's challenging to raise money. It's challenging to kind of know your way around the political system in such a small community where they're all so tightly knit and banded together at that political level. And it was tough, and they were turned away. You may have seen some of the elected officials exerting a little bit of influence in the businesses where they would go in and put up their signs and encourage them strongly to take down any opposition signs.
So different atmosphere, different environment.
Completely, yeah. A pressure cooker is what I likened it to.
Well, and now throw in the prospect that, of course, Steve Wynn talking about building in Everett, and that seems to be going forward. So, you're going to be caught between this no matter what.
Well, and that's the sentiment that they were floating, where we were encouraging folks. We always knew when we were marching towards the November 5th vote that no matter what happened in East Boston or Revere, at that point, the prevailing sentiment was that it was a package deal. We know the rules changed after that, but many of us, especially in leadership, knew that the only way to protect any community against, the burden of a casino close by or within their parameters is repeal. Is to kick it right out of the state. So we already knew that was our next step, and that's what we try to share with folks in Revere.
And tell us about that, because that was the prevailing view. You want to talk about that was it's a fait. Gambling casinos are a fait accompli, and the law, after many years of being discussed, was ultimately passed and very quickly passed and put through. How serious is this repeal effort?
The repeal effort.
And is it legal? Because isn't there a lawsuit going forward that's saying, these entrepreneurs, these casino moguls have already spent all this money to try and win this license. You can't pull it back from them now.
Sure, you touched on a lot there, and I wish there was somebody much more qualified than I. I'm just one of the foot soldiers in the repeal effort. But it's so serious that even with hearing in front of the SJC pending, volunteers gathered over 90,000 signatures within 90 days to put this question on the ballot. It's so serious that these folks are ramping up to do it again. It's so serious that we've had some really, high-level backers financially back the initiative, because, what the folks in Revere and Everett and other communities that are so hasty to reach for this low-hanging fruit, this too good to be true golden deal, what they're refusing to see is the negative impacts, that it's a short-term gain, if any gain at all, with very far and long-lasting impacts, not only within the host communities and surrounding communities, but across the Commonwealth. It's an industry, and I use the term loosely, that's time has long since passed. They're, poisoning themselves to drag us 50 years into the past, and it's cannibalistic. What we know from other developments across the country is that it cannibalizes local businesses. It changes the whole way of life. You only need to look to Atlantic City. Even in Connecticut, we had Congressman Bob Steele, who came up and spoke to forums both in East Boston and Revere, and he's traveled all across the state.
And does he represent the area that is Mohegan Sun?
He does. He's from Connecticut, and he's talked about how it's had devastating impacts in the sleepy bedroom towns that that used to be that host them. It's completely been a burden and a drain on the social systems, on the safety systems, and the economy. Small mom and pop businesses have been impacted, devastatingly so. And he's been fighting against it.
But people gamble. I think the last time you were here, you said that you even
Oh,
gamble.
yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. And I think.
So what? Send it somewhere else? I'm
Well,
playing a little devil's advocate
sure.
here, but
Look, when we first started back in 2010, and since I was last here, so John Ribeiro, who leads the repeal effort,
Right.
is my brother.
Right.
And we, in the gaming industry, or the proposed gaming industry in Massachusetts, should be happy that we didn't drag our 4 other siblings into the fray just yet. But we had an exchange back in 2010 when it seemed like it was really imminent. The legislature was pushing really hard to pass the bill, and we had this little email exchange. And it was something like, oh, hey, they really want to bring casinos here. It looks like they're going to put it through. And my response was, well, what can we even do? Well, and look what we've done, right? I mean, not just us, but we've coalesced with folks across the state and in our community, certainly. But when we first got into it, we had questions like we would about any development, any hotel or, multi-unit condo building or whatever. What is the impact going to be to our community? And naturally, the first concern was, traffic, perhaps crime, burden to infrastructure, and that's where we started. And now, as it has unfolded 4 years later on this journey, we see how the industry manifests and how it operates, and how this new young industry that hasn't even opened doors to any facility yet has impacted us. It's impacted the democratic process. The democratic process essentially doesn't exist in East Boston.
well, you made it. So you brought it back to life. Clearly, you're talking about elected officials. I think every elected official in East Boston was supporting the casino, if I'm correct.
They were.
And
They absolutely were.
most of the mayoral candidates, with few exceptions, as well. And you proved them wrong. Have they gotten religion now? I
don't know if
Are
they've
they
gotten
helping you
religion.
now in this kind of? I don't know if I call it fight with Revere,
Sure.
because it's something that's taken place in another jurisdiction, but.
Our representative and our senator have reached out to the Gaming Commission in writing, and most recently our representative sent his chief of staff to address the Gaming Commission and describing that really, as it's manifesting now, it violates the intent of the law. I'd like to see a little bit more fist pounding and table flipping and a little bit more outrage, as the Gaming Commission has cited a lack of. But unfortunately, we can't go in to outrage. This is outrage in action. We just keep going. I thought my job was done on November 5th, but here we are 5 months later, and we're still here.
Going on.
Yeah, we're still
What
here.
about that? Have some of these people developed a newfound respect for you and your colleagues? And I know you're not alone. I met many of you when I was
Yeah.
over there.
They're-
Changed the way that they look at you and how East Boston politics.
I'm not, 56% of East Bostonians voted no. And I think that our elected officials were shocked at that number. I certainly was taken aback, pleasantly so. But I'm not naive enough to think that every person that voted no is going to think like I do 100% about every issue. And I think a lot of them still maintain loyalties to our elected officials. So I don't think outside of the casino issue, since they haven't seen too much muscle flexed, they'll point to, we had this great guy who was actually my co-chair on No East Casino, Brian Gannon.
I remember
who,
Brian. Yeah.
Threw his hat
He
in the
ran
ring for city council.
City councilor.
As did my dad.
Yeah.
Really just to kind of send a message out there, and they'll point to, proponents in our elected officials and their representatives will point to the fact that, well, those guys didn't win, and that our city councilor won by a landslide. Well, our city councilor is a very lovely man, Councilor Lamontina. I've known him for over 30 years myself. He's done a lot in the community, and people have a hard time separating or actually connecting people, the candidates necessarily with what they do sometimes. And you know what, sometimes it's not a deal breaker.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that it should be. So
the ground hasn't quite shifted yet.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I guess there need to be a few more issues, and I think it really depends on where this lands, how everything, comes out in the wash.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because now, of course, the City of Boston and Marty Walsh, who I think it's fair to say at least nominally supported the casino in East Boston, if not, vocally. I think that's fair to say. I was at a forum where it was brought up, but now they have gone in and asked for host community status. And talk about, was that a tactical shift, or was that only about mitigation, or was it a reflection of what East Boston voters had to say in November?
So I can't purport to know what's in the mayor's head, but I think, on where he's going next with this. But I think that he and I agree, along with all the folks that voted no, and even some of the folks that voted yes, that you cannot separate East Boston from the impacts of a Suffolk Downs casino. And actually, the thought of an urban casino being insular in any way, where the Gaming Commission can suggest that Winthrop won't be impacted and it abuts it, largely on one side, and it's difficult to see any kind of circumstance where you can cherry pick and say any community within 10, 20, 30, 50-mile radius, because we're so densely populated and because all roads lead to Suffolk Downs or all roads lead to Everett, to kind of extract people from that. And also every team MBTA line and every main street will reap some impacts. And look, the payload for any casino developer is going to be the one closest to Logan Airport. That's the gateway to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Every tourism and travel dollar goes that gauntlet.
Route 1A,
Right.
and in theory, and I'm taking this out of ways, but if it were successful, it might be yet another election that you have to go through. If in fact
let's talk about that a little bit.
They
So
were
that-
designated as a host community, wouldn't that spawn another election? You ready?
If the mayor wished, I'm ready for anything.
At this point, right?
Where's the camera? We are ready for anything. We've been ready. We knew that this wasn't going to be a done deal on November 5th. We had a conversation with Chip Tuttle on Election Day, and I said, really, the only question that will remain after this evening, it won't be whether or not we still have our work cut out for us on November 6th. It's just how late we get to sleep in. But
Turned out to be true.
right, yeah, and
The next day, I
but-
believe.
in terms of what the next step will be, should Mayor Walsh be successful in his bid to have the Gaming Commission recognize Boston as a host community, that's entirely up to him. It will be in his hands, and he can decide to honor the vote of East Bostonians as proxy for the city of Boston, as requested by City Council and the mayor, and all the folks that were on board with this. Even Suffolk Downs, I'm pretty sure they were pretty happy to have East Boston be the only voice.
They didn't want it citywide.
Right, because they thought that we were easy to handle and wrangle. So that would be our preference. But he may have something else in mind. He may want it to go to another vote. I guess that remains to be seen. But one thing still remains. It was true back in 2011. It's true today. The only way to safeguard East Boston, Revere, Everett, Martha's Vineyard now in the fray, and any other city or town in the Commonwealth, host, surrounding, or otherwise, is to repeal it. And as painful as this process has been, it has epitomized what we can expect of this industry. This is what we can expect of the gaming legislation, what we can expect of our representatives, what we can expect of developers and investors, anybody with a hand or a finger or a thought on the industry. They're not looking out for the best interest of the Commonwealth. They're not looking out for the best interest of citizens, homeowners, business owners. They're looking out for
Well, this
bottom
was
line.
all about revenue initially, of course, and at that point we were in the throes of a recession. And what do you attribute this kind of sudden kind of change of mind? Or there's polls, in fact, showing that it's very close now. If there were, if the ballot question succeeds, and I understand there's some question of whether it will be on the ballot or not. but very close, this kind of change of heart.
You know,
And at one time it was, well, I don't know if it was overwhelmingly, but it was strongly supported.
well, when your
that's fair.
campaign is jobs and revenues, it's hard for folks to fight that. And look, people lead very busy lives. All they want to do is work, live, raise their family, be successful, and not really get into politics if they can help it. And I think that that's what a lot of folks were doing very early on, and those that were listened to the local thought leaders on the issue. And as hard as we fought for transparency, all of these kind of missteps and meanderings off the beaten path of the law and the legislation and all of these juggling to benefit the developers have cast a light on everything that's wrong with the legislation, everything that's wrong with the process. And it's funny when folks have come to us and they refer to us as a scrappy little group and whatever. At the end of the day, we spent $47,000, and I'm amazed and impressed and in awe of the folks that contributed that much money to us. But the developers, Suffolk Downs, Mohegan Sun, Caesars, whoever they are these days, admit to or reported spending probably about $3 million. That represents an 87-to-1 ratio, okay? And we didn't do that on our own. What happened was folks realized that this was a true threat to their way of life, their ability to work,
you
live,
said
raise their family.
if in fact the referendum on gambling does go on the ballot, though, there now are some people that are willing to step up and raise some serious money and put some serious money into opposing it. Who are they? Why? What's in it for them?
Well, I think a lot of them are people that are have concerns about revenues in the Commonwealth. They're business leaders. They're folks that have a vested interest in public health and welfare. There's a whole spectrum of folks. Look, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has always been on the cutting edge of, well, pretty much everything since the birth of this nation. And you're looking at a handful of developers that want to come in and relegate us to theme park status, that want to, again, drag us back 50 years into the past into a dying industry that is being saturated, oversaturated as we speak. If you look at the Revere project, you're talking about a corporation that has had 6 consecutive losing quarters. They've lost 25% of their revenue since 2008, and now they're poisoning themselves to open up 2 shops to bring in half the revenues. That doesn't really seem like, and they're backed by a hedge fund. That's kind of sketchy. That doesn't seem like anything that's on solid ground. What it does seem like is a new American business model that says, let's make as much money as you can, and then
Get to getting while the getting's good, and then get out of town.
And then get out and leave the Commonwealth holes in the bag, which we've seen before with other corporations. This is just another industry.
And what about the Gaming Commission? We've just got a minute or two left. Have they been? They seem to have gone out of their way to be transparent. Have they been straight with you folks?
Why? I don't know. They changed the meaning of the law and the letter of the law in real time as we sat there. But look, I think that's the one, if I can talk about the one failure in the process, I think installing a commission before an industry exists was a failure in the law. I think maybe, kind of a task force that didn't rely on this for its payday would have been a better decision and a better choice. So I think at this point, they're on a mission, install casinos, and we should be looking for the most robust deal, the best return on investment, and the best return for the Commonwealth. Instead, it seems like they're going to take, the last limping horse going across the line.
What development, political development, should we watch to see which way the wind is really blowing on this? What would you?
Well, look, the next big milestone is the SJC's return on the decision. Right now, they're preparing comments to go in front of the SJC, and ideally, they should put it through. So it
This
goes
is on the ballot question?
To get on the ballot for 2014, and then you'll see the folks across the state really energized and the repeal campaign kick into high gear.
Well, we look forward to that. Look forward to covering it. We hope you'll come back and talk to us then. Maybe we'll get...
we'll bring some experts. We'll bring John Romero in.
Right, you and Chip Tuttle and whomever. Again, Celeste Myers is one of the founders of No Eastie Casino, which battled the forces promoting a casino on Suffolk Downs and miraculously won. That was last November, but the dragon is not slain yet. Still more to come with a proposal for right next door in Revere, and of course a competing proposal in Everett, right next to Charlestown. This is an issue that just lives on, and we'll continue covering it. Celeste Myers, as always, nice to have you here.
Thank you, Joe.
I like what you do, and I like following this issue. Certainly want to have you back in the future. You're watching Talk to the Neighborhoods here on the Boston Neighborhood Network. We're here tonight and every Monday night at the same time. We'll be back next week. Till then, for the entire staff and crew here at BNN, I'm Joe Heisler, your host. Thanks for watching. Have a pleasant evening.